Hello, and welcome to another episode of Science Fiction Remnant. Today, we're doing Darling in the Franxx and another anime, and I gotta bring my good friend Max for this one over here. So, hello, Max. How you doing?
I'm still waking up, man. It's 7:36 a.m. on Monday morning, so bright and early, chipper, and raring to go.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much. I gotta thank you for two things. Number one, for coming up on this show to talk about this, and number two, because you're the one who recommended this anime for me.
Yeah, well, anime is one of those things where there's a lot of it, and wading through it takes a lot of time. And if you can get a good recommendation, it really, focuses you in on good ones.
Yeah, and you know how it is sometimes. You might find something that is really good for you, and so I think there's a little bit of luck when it comes to that the recommendations too. So
Mm.
when you find someone that recommends good things, most likely you have a chance that you both have the same taste when it comes to this type of entertainment.
Mm. Yeah, well, I mean, we've been chatting for a while. I've been listening to your show, and I agree with a lot of the stuff you say. And there's a couple of your shows that I haven't listened to specifically because I want to get around to watching them first, because obviously, spoiler territory.
Yes.
Don't want to blow the enjoyment. Which this will be spoiler heavy. So if you haven't watched Darling in the Franxx, it's one of those anime that you really need to watch before you discuss it, because it's almost like a murder mystery, continual reveals of things that you're like, what? That's how. You're
Exactly.
constantly learning stuff, and that's what draws you forward. That there's new things and links and connections and surprises around every corner, just about. And then there's the Lieutenant Albuquerque in episode 18, is it? 18 or 19, somewhere around there.
There's a lot of turns in this one over here.
So go and watch it. I mean, it's 24 episodes. There's only one season. The story completes at the end of the 24 episodes, so it's not like you're going to be going, okay, now I've got to wait 3 years for another season or something like that. So 24 episodes. Go binge it. It's worth it from the very start. You'll either love the Lieutenant Albuquerque or hate it. There seems to be two camps. Watch it all and then come back.
Yeah, and there's kind of like some kind of comfort when it comes to something like that, where in one hand you're like, okay, you're sad. There's only so much that of the content that you can watch, but I like to think that the really nice thing about it is the fact that you have an ending, you have a beginning, and you have an ending. You have the complete story, and then that's kind of nice. But yeah, this one has a lot of turns.
Oh yeah. But there's no like massive cliffhanger at the end, and you then have to wait a number of years to find out what the hell happened. So
Exactly. Um, we're doing something different on this episode. For all of you who follow my show, you know that we usually pick. If it's a TV show that we're doing, we pick one episode. Um, I decided to do this just kind of like the entire property because of that reason, because of the fact that you don't have multiple seasons. You have just what it is. You have a beginning, you have an ending, and it's a complete story. So very important. If you really don't mind spoilers, go ahead, but you might want to go pick up and watch this before you listen to the episode. So I'll give you a chance to, if you're not on the stream and you're listening to this on audio, just pause it and go watch it. If you're on the stream, welcome.
I'm a big fan of context. So if you could give me a minute or two just to run a little bit of context about, especially if people haven't watched a lot of anime. The episodes are 25 minutes each, so they're not huge. I mean, you're not like spending 24 hours, like a whole day watching. It's 25 minutes, so you can bang them out fairly quickly. And it's a story that's engaging from the very opening scene. They do a very good job, especially I should say that on Funimation, the English dub is excellent. Some of the dubs, well, I need to take another step back. So translating from Japanese isn't an easy thing. The language is more about ideas rather than sentences that build ideas. So it's oftentimes when they do a translation, you get something that doesn't really work in English, and then you've got to then have another think about it and turn it into something that works in English. And a lot of times that step isn't taken. So you get what's called a direct translation, not a translation that's been made to work within English. And it just doesn't track very well. You sort of I spend a lot of time reading subs, and it kind of takes away from the enjoyment, because you've got to read the sub while you're trying to watch the image as well. And with a lot of anime, the artwork is so nice, you don't want to have your concentration split. Whereas if the dub's not very good, it's almost the same problem. You're trying to work out what they're trying to say, and you're not watching the show, and you're not thinking about the show. But when you've got a really good dub, you don't have to spend that time working out what's going on. It's just straight up what you need to know, and the whole thing flows. If you've got a really good dub, then you can sit back and relax and really just take it all in. And that's what I really enjoy when there's a really good dub. And this does have a really good dub. The voice acting is excellent. Funimation do really good dubs. Apparently they don't treat their voice actors very well, which is a shame, but the results are there. So for the viewer, if you can get past the whole Funimation doesn't treat their voice actors very well, it's really enjoyable, an enjoyable watch. The artwork's really good, and it flows along. It makes sense in English. So I think that they've done a really good job, not only with the translation, but the making it make sense in English, and then the voice acting as well. Another thing I should just say very quickly about anime is that it can be a little bit pervy. So you are going to see a lot of, young people, young teens. They seem to focus on young teens. I don't understand exactly why that is. They could have made them, late teens, and it still would have worked. But they seem to have this thing about young teens saving the world. It's almost a genre in itself. Do you find that, Robert?
Yeah. Many, and it's very suggestive. So it's I kind of like this one because I compare if you compare this to some others that I've seen, it gets a little uncomfortable to watch, and once you get past the uncomfortable, then the story, then you can enjoy the story. This one, I think that they did a really good job where they didn't take it to that line. It was very suggestive, extremely suggestive, but it didn't get to the point where I felt uncomfortable, and that was really nice. Um, and like you said, the translation, the sometimes there's a lot of things that get lost in translation, and I
Exactly.
think they did a really good job because you can kind of tell, even if you don't know Japanese. All you gotta do is put in the subtitles, and you put it in English, put it in subtitles, and you can tell right away because what they're saying doesn't really match what's on the letters. But in this, and also even if you don't go that far, some of the things don't kind of make sense. But this one, it just flows. It's really nice how they did it, not only in the translation itself, but also the acting is very important when it comes to that because it gets you in the zone. It gets you to believe in what's going on and that actual scene that you're watching. It makes it that much believable, and I think they did a great job on that as well.
Yeah, nothing was phoned in. All of the voice acting was on point, which I thought was really good.
Yeah,
You've
yeah,
got to have engaging voice acting to believe the characters, and you're quite right. It all works, and it's really nice when you get, because there are some that are just like, what the hell are you doing? It I guess you could kind of compare it to pop music Even and I'm not talking about pop music in specifically, like pop music in different countries or different cultures, but even just pop music in different times. Like you look back at ABBA from the 70s and you're sort of going, what the hell were they doing? Look at those clothes. It's just, it doesn't quite work with the norms for now and the way we look at things now. And you sort of bell-bottom trousers and those big collars and the big puffy hair and you're sort of like, what were they thinking? They look like clowns. But back then, that was cool. So, exactly. It's this cognitive dissonance, which I went on, like, when you came on the Alita live stream yesterday, we were talking about cognitive dissonance. And it's a real thing where you look at something that doesn't quite work for you because you're not part of that culture or that or you're not swimming in that water, is the way I sort of like to describe it, and it doesn't quite work for you. And that's another thing about anime. It's a Japanese lens. So Japanese culture, from what I understand, and individual Japanese people may want to correct me if I'm wrong, but they have a very strong sense of society. And that everybody needs to be part of the society and add to the society. And it's almost like morality police. And that morality police show up in a lot of shows, actually, where they sort of wander around and make sure people are doing the right thing. And a lot of people don't do the right thing. But there's this desire for certain people to go around trying to make other people be moral, which is kind of weird when you've got pervy anime, but it's this weird sort of switch where anime, because it's animated, they can get away with showing things that people are thinking about and want to see, but shouldn't be seen because it's not moral. And it's sort of this weird juxtaposition, which I keep seeing in animes, and especially aiming at, like, a lot of the characters is like the young people saving the world. And I was thinking about this last night, trying to work out why they focus specifically on young teens. It's sort of like the 13 to 15 age bracket is where they really zero in on. That is the point, and it's middle school. They call it middle school over in Japan, and I think they have. Do you have middle school in America?
Yes,
we don't have anything like that. Yeah, so our schooling system goes from kindergarten to 6. Is public school or junior school, and then you have high school from 7 to 12. That's all we have. We have 2 schools.
Oh, wow.
They don't break it up into 3. So, and that can be a little bit problematic in that you've got 13-year-olds. So you go into high school in Australia at 13, and you've got the 13 to 18-year-olds all together in one school. And that, 13-year-olds are just starting to discover their sexuality, and 18-year-olds are fully in it. Exactly. So having them all together, there is a little bit of predator-prey sort of relationship going on there. Whereas I can understand why they're breaking into 3. We do have years 7 to 10, which is one group, and then 11 and 12 are treated as a separate group, and that's like the school certificate, and then the higher school certificate, which is the school certificate you do the exams for at the end of year 10, and the high school certificate you do at the end of year 12. So those are the 2 big examination points and the marks where you've got to pass or fail. And some people leave school at the end of year 10 and go off and do trades or something if they're not academically inclined. What I understand in Japan is there's a lot of pressure as soon as you get to junior high that you've got to work out what you're going to do with your life. The culture is work out what you're going to do with your life at 13. And I'm like, when I was 13, I was, playing handball in the courtyard and running around being an idiot and discovering girls. And I had no thoughts of my future. There's none of that. But in Japan, it's like, because of the culture, young people have to know what they're going to do with the rest of their lives at 13. And I'm like, wow. And I think that's why they focus on 13 to 15 as those are the people who are going to save the world, because they expect that they're going to know what they're going to do with the rest of their lives at that point. And and they need to have a path. And that's why they focus down there. And I think there's also a lot of focus on that age group because that's when they have to make those decisions. And if you made the wrong decision and you end up in a dead-end job or something like that, you look back at that point and saying, wow, I wish I could have done something better at that point in my life. And that's why I think that point in life is a focal point for Japanese animators and anime writers and all that. The young people need to save the world because that's when they've got to make that decision. We make that decision in 17 and 18, and I still think that's a bit young. I mean, I didn't know what the hell I was doing until I was in my mid-20s. So I look back at that and go, wow, they really need to have this shit together early. So I think that's why they focus on that point. It's like we expect a lot out of people at that age in Japanese society, and I think that's why that's the focus. But they also, sexuality comes to the fore right then as well. If you're going to act like an adult, you're going to be treated like an adult, sort of at that very point. And all the voice actors are in their 20s at least. Some of them are older than that. So you've got all these much older people voicing these younger people. So these younger people have been quite mature in the way they're presented. I don't think that real life 13, 15-year-olds are quite like that. Have you noticed something of that?
I cannot agree with the whole thing what you just said. I was just thinking it in a different way because I mean you don't need to be involved in the Japanese culture to realize that around 13 this is when if you watch a lot of anime, if you read a lot of manga, you realize that the pressure is on. You have those sort of tests. I forget how they call those tests, but they're all running around to see if they're going to get into good school. It all depends on how they do on those tests, and it's always this pressure around 13. So I think this kids are forced into maturity at a very early age, and I think in addition to what you said and how why all these animes usually center around this age range is because number one, the kids are going to be the ones that are going to make the country better. They are the ones, they're going to be the future CEOs. They're going to be the future scientists. They're going to be the future everything. They're going to guide this country. So that, in part of that, I think that's mainly the reason why they made the kids or they put these kids into the situations where, especially on this anime, where they are actually the saviors of humanity. I don't know if it's a different perspective, but it's kind of like along the lines of what you just mentioned when you were talking about that.
Well, that's why I say it's almost a genre itself. Middle schoolers save the world, and it comes up in quite a few anime. And again, it's there's sexualization, and in this anime there is sexualization, so you might find it a little creepy.
Yes.
But I'm trying to give context in that why I think that the middle schoolers are the focus of a lot of these anime, so you can kind of understand the mindset. And yeah, a lot of anime is quite pervy. Like they'll start with groin shots and then zoom up to the face and things like that. And the short skirts are quite common and that sort of thing. So you see that a lot. The other anime that I highly recommended to you, a certain scientific railgun, which is on Netflix, at least in Australia at the moment, but it's also on Funimation. Again, a really good dub. And dubbed by adults, not voiced by the people whose ages are, but it's again middle schoolers, and there's the pervy element, and it's just part of the culture, I think.
Yeah, and I wanted to read the little blurb from IMDb on this anime. So you kind of get a general census. It says, in the future world where humanity has been driven to endangerment by a giant beast, a strike force is assembled to destroy the monsters and save the world.
That's a very, very succinct and somewhat Swiss cheese kind of description.
Definitely.
It gives you the barest bones of what's actually happening. So, do you mind if I
Go
expand
ahead.
on that?
Go ahead.
Okay, so it's very much a coming of age story, but it's a coming of age story that's very sort of difficult for the characters, and the first 16 to 18 episodes is very much slice of life. Kids trying to work out what the hell's going on. Society is not what you see today in Western or Japanese society. Society's pretty much gone because of what's happened in the past, and it's all comes down to that lovely Dr. Franxx, who seems to have been the driving force in the change in humanity, as it were. But of course, it's never one guy's fault. There's always other things moving around in the background, which is part of the surprise. You discover what's actually going on.
He's very
But
scary.
oh yes, it is very much. I mean, they don't tend to have cyber wear, like they
Yeah.
don't have stuff implanted in their bodies, but it's young people save the world. It's mecha. And yeah, it's society doesn't work the way we're used to. These kids don't have any role models.
Yes.
They're genetically engineered, and I'd call them grown. As in, oh, just one second, I'm gonna let my cat out. He's
That's
been let in
okay.
the room to have something to eat.
That's okay.
There you go.
But is they are, because they're grown. I think that's why they have that social, let me call it social dysfunction, where they
Yeah.
don't know most of the social norms when it comes to each other. And it's kind of funny in a way. Like, just to give you an idea, I don't know who brought up the name Kiss, and they're wondering, okay, what that is. So, kind of like this stuff like that on a normal. Um, I believe because of they are in the situation that they are, they're completely oblivious when it comes to that.
Yes. So the next few sentences that I say are serious spoiler territory. So everything else that I say is going to start ruining the surprises. And this is an anime full of surprises, so you need to go and watch it.
Yes.
If you go on from this point, you are going to be spoiled, like from the next couple of sentences. So the reason that they don't have societal direction like that is because that society is gone. Human beings don't have society almost at all anymore. They live in the domed cities that move around the world, mining the now what's that stuff called?
Magma.
Magma energy. That's
Like,
it. Yes, thank you.
magma energy.
Yeah. So the magma energy that they're mining from deep underground. The process of mining it has destroyed the surface. Also, the klaxosaurs, which showed up when they started mining the magma energy, have also been destroying the surface. But basically, pulling that stuff out of the ground and using it, and it's an unusual power source. I compare it to protoculture in Robotech. If you know that very ancient series back in the 80s, have you seen that one?
That's one of those um, series that just escaped through the cracks. It's one
Really?
of those. It's one of those that it was on my list, and it was on my list, and I watch it. I'll watch it next. I'll watch it next, and I never got around it.
Oh wow, we had it playing here on TV in the late 70s and early 80s, and I couldn't get enough of it. It was fantastic. But that again is whereas this is feels well translated, and they've stuck to the story, or the original story from Japan. The Harmony Gold used the Robotech. Well, they called it Robotech. Was actually called Macross. And there was actually 3 series. One was called Macross, and the other 2 had completely different names. I don't remember what they are, though. And they combined them all together and called them the same story, and called them different parts of the same story. But they completely changed how the story worked to turn it into a trilogy.
Mhm.
And that's an example of poor translation, in that they made a completely different story out of what they were given from Japan. They just didn't follow it. So it's a little bit disappointing. But I mean, as a kid, I thought Robotech was the bee's knees. Big converting mecha from airplanes to giant fighty robots, and it was, again, young people saving the earth, but it wasn't this whole young teenager, like middle schoolers. They were 18, 19, 20. They weren't quite that focused on kids, as it were. But
Yeah.
it just feels like the stars have been getting younger over the decades, as it were. So I sort of lost track of anime in the early 2000s, and then I picked
Mhm.
it back up again like a couple of years ago. So I'm sort of catching up with a lot of these things. But just getting back to this one, the whole society aspect. They don't have any role models teaching them anything about society. They've got two older young people, like they must be late teens or early 20s, who are called, was it Auntie? And I don't know what the guy's moniker was. Can't remember. But basically, they give them orders, and then each of these groups of kids work for one of the cities that move around, the dome cities, and they're
Mhm.
the defenders. They pilot these mecha called Franxx, which you find out later on have been developed from Klaxosaurs. So they're actually driving Klaxosaurs to fight Klaxosaurs, which is one of the surprises. And only the young people can drive them, because they can only be driven by people who still have the ability to procreate. Humanity has lost its ability to procreate in becoming immortal. So all the adults are now immortals. They've been living for hundreds of years. They've lost interest in society and all the norms, because they've basically taken themselves outside of that. And so they just exist to exist, and they have these devices that they climb into and get their jollies every day. And that's human society. It's pretty damn boring. From what I could tell.
No.
But the kids discover this slowly over the course of like 10 episodes or something, because they actually keep the kids away from the rest of the adults. Like, they don't interact except at ceremonies where
Mhm.
they thank the kids for defending the city.
Yeah.
But it's a kind of a weird arrangement. It's very hard to imagine society breaking down to that point where, I suppose, if you're immortal, you no longer do the get born, grow up, learn stuff, become an adult, become part of society, have your own, find somebody, have your own kids, grow old, you know, gain wisdom, pass it along, and then die. You don't have that progression anymore. The progression stopped.
Yeah.
So you now have adults who are immortal but can't procreate, so they don't make any more kids, and they live in these dome cities, if you can call it living, and they just do what they're told and get jollies every day, and that's life.
If you think about it, that the whole thing is very, very bleak. And
It
I
is.
remember when as you watch this anime and you go through it and you discover all these little things. When I discover what was going on with the adults, it was just, it, it was very dark. It kind of
Mm.
shocked me. It's like, yeah, and many people don't realize. Okay, everybody wants to live forever, right? But they don't really analyze what
If you call it living.
exactly. That's so there's a lot that comes with that, and being able to realize that it was just very, very sad to me to watch. That unfold in this property.
Well, you can kind of see when they get, I think it's episode 17 or 18, somewhere around there, where they go into the background of Dr. Franxx and what happened to
Yeah.
humanity to get to this point. You kind of see, like, lots of things were promised, but only a few of them were delivered. And once people had given up their ability to procreate, they were now locked in this everlasting haze of existence, and there was no progression anymore. And they didn't even get to see the kids, and the kids were only, genetically engineered and grown to defend the cities once the Klaxosaurs attacked. And they moved into the cities because you couldn't live on the ground anymore because of desertification, because of the mining of the magma energy. So they kind of went down the plug hole, and they could see themselves going down the plug hole, but they couldn't really do anything about it. And they to continue existing, they ended up just fading away, kind of thing. And then it gets to that point in the story where they're all converted into energy beings and sent off into space, and it's like, okay, didn't see that coming. But the adults really aren't even part of the story, really. There's that one episode where what's his name? The fiery young bloke.
Can I think? It's not Gore. No. Sotome. I think it might have been
right.
Yeah, which is another thing that I don't know if you realize. Another thing that really caught my attention is apparently the creator of this anime likes to do this with when he has to create the actual names. If you realize, the let me call it the main protagonist is Hero.
Yeah.
His name, he's I didn't know it actually comes from his designation number. In there, he's 016 or
Yes.
number 16. But in Japanese, Hero is 16.
Yes. Like Ichigo is
It's
Ichi,
15.
one. Yeah.
So, and another cool thing about Ichigo is I don't know what it is, but I love that Japanese name. It actually translates to strawberry. So I found it very interesting that it means two things. It means 15 and it means strawberry.
Yeah, and 02 is obviously they didn't come up with the name for her. But the interesting thing about 02 is in Japanese that is Oni. And that an Oni, in ONI, Oni, is actually a demon or a monster from folklore, which kind of fits, and that's why they left her name as 02. Because, and he actually says in the first episode, "Oh, your designation is 02. Oh, we could call you Oni, but that doesn't really work. We'll just call you 02 because we don't want to call you monster."
Especially how she's very she feels very offended multiple times throughout the anime when she feels that people are thinking that she's or treating her like she is a monster.
Her greatest desire is to become properly human. Maybe we should take a step back. So in the first episode, you from the very first moment that this anime starts, I'm getting too confused because I start reading mangas from the series after I've watched the anime, and I start to confuse the two. It's the whole thing of this thing is so engaging, I want to know more. So you then go start reading the manga and reading ahead in case there's another season. Not with this one though, because there isn't a second season. But from the very beginning, the first thing you get an opening of trees and a little foresty area, which turns out to be where the kids live. They live in the dome at the top of the city, which has direct sunlight, whereas the rest of the city doesn't. And there's a forested area, so they can get out and run around and be young people exploring and have a bit of nature to explore. Because most of the nature has been destroyed on Earth, as it turns out. But they've kept it in these little domes at the top of the city, and then they decided to put the kids there because they have to keep them separate from the adults because they don't want the kids to find out what actually is happening with the rest of society. As it is, there's not a great amount of society. But the very beginning, you get a voiceover from Hero talking about the Jajan, which is a bird that only has one wing and it's stuck on the ground and it can't fly unless it finds another Jeanne, which is a female, which has the other wing, and then they somehow connect. It's never actually explained how they hang on to each other or whatever, however they connect, but the birds can only fly if the two of them are together. And that's the crux of the comparison between himself and 02, as they can only fly if they're together.
And all the Franxx as
Otherwise,
well. Because Franxx,
well,
even
yes.
Dr. Frank invented them. I think there were some experiments where they were trying to drive them, and it caused some uh, physical damage to the pilot until they figure out that they have to be driven in pairs. So
Yes.
I also thought when they mentioned that this was kind of like a metaphor that maybe was explained to them as kids, to explain why they, because I'm sure as kids you have a lot of questions. Why?
Oh, yeah.
As to as
I
to
have an
why,
8-year-old. He's a why machine.
because they're in this they call them nurseries, where they're trained and then educated, and then they get I guess measured, and whoever has the highest score gets to be a Frank pilot. So I'm sure that although this was not explained or it was ever shown in the anime, knowing kids, you know that they at one point kids will ask that question: why do you need to drive a Frank? And I think that they probably might have used that metaphor, which is a lot easier to explain to kids why, instead of going with like what Dr. Frank, Purby himself, but it's easier to explain about birds than trying to do it the way that it was the original way, which is you need someone with the ability to procreate, which is something that might not be good to explain to little kids. So I don't know. I was when he was saying that, that's what came to mind, and for all I know, I might be incorrect, but it just makes sense to me.
Well, there's that scene in the episode which is Dr. Franxx's backstory, where he's your classic scientist who's focused on his work. He's got another scientist lady who's really attracted to him, but he's focused on his work, and he's like, yeah, we can go out, yeah, we can have a baby if you really want. You sure you don't want to have the immortality treatment? She goes, no, I want to have a baby. And she's pregnant. And he never got around to having the immortality treatment because he's too busy working, which was interesting. And he ended up replacing his body with cybernetics rather than being immortal, like having his flesh immortalized and losing his ability to procreate. But he gets his partner pregnant, and then they work out while they're building the Franxx that or developing the Franxx that the people who have had the immortalization treatment can't pilot them. There's something to do with, you've got to be genetically fecund to access these things, which, it's kind of like, why? Okay, well, that's the way it is. But, and there was that other sort of light bulb moment where they discovered that they were fighting living creatures, not machines. And that the Klaxosaurs had a male and female pilot inside them, that was in that globe that they were destroying to stop them. So that they were basically killing the pilots. And it turned out that the Klaxosaurs had a very similar society to human society. They looked a little bit different, but they lived on the planet before we got here. And so this sort of thing kept happening. The Verm kept showing up and trying to absorb it. The Verm are kind of like the Star Trek Borg. Except that they institute themselves into society, and try and control things and try and angle things towards the point where they can absorb the populace into their collective as energy beings. So, I mean, there's all this idea about, in the far future, we'll give up our physical forms and become beings of pure energy and thought and go off and do something else. But it's a nice idea, but we won't live to see it. But it's one of those postulated possibilities that matter can be transferred into energy, and therefore physical beings can evolve into beings of pure energy. But we never met a being of pure energy. It's all theoretical. But that's sort of where that angle in this anime has come from. The Verm are beings of pure energy, and they want humanity to join their collective. They've gone around the galaxy hoovering up all the different races that they come across, and they want to take humanity into an energy society where there's a soft, comfortable enjoyment, and that's existence. And it's like, but the kids are like, well, no, we don't want that, because life's about living and struggling and overcoming and enjoying and all this stuff, like real human society, not this crap. And when all this is revealed, like slowly through the story, the kids push back against it because they wanted to become adults and they wanted to join human society because they're kept aside from it. But what they didn't realize is that they were just grown to pilot Franxx, and they weren't going to be allowed to do that.
Which is another thing. It's kind of like they're cattled. They're
oh yeah,
they're
expendable.
Yes. It's really interesting how it's actually sad from both sides of the story. All because of the.
It's hugely sad.
You don't have one side that is. Go ahead.
Nothing's actually working.
Yeah,
there is no society. It's there's the existence of the adults, which is perpetual, and then there's the kids that have been grown to drive the Franxx to fight the Klaxosaurs so that they can keep mining magna energy, and it's all being manipulated by these aliens who are eventually going to take all the adults away and just leave the planet to die. And they've done the same thing to the Klaxosaurs hundreds of thousands of years ago, and this is the shit that they pull. And it was interesting that if you take the name Verm, which is the aliens' name, and you take the name Ape, which is the society that the aliens created on Earth to eventually take control of the government, if you add those two together and rearrange them slightly, you get vampire.
Interesting.
Did you know that?
No.
Did I knew something about this you didn't know?
It's very interesting, and it makes a lot of sense. Wow.
Do you think, what the hell? What was his Verm name, and why did they call themselves Ape? And yeah, that's the reason. It's one of those wordplay things.
Yeah, they sucked up the planet. I mean, it's another thing for the planet when you get to see an eye view, bird's eye view of the horizon, or whenever you're watching this anime, is all desolated. And it's kind of like mining. They're always mining. There's no plants. The only plants that you see are either isolated locations, like where they reached the beach and there was that little city or old city, or in every one of those platforms that they call city that goes from place to place. But mainly the whole planet is just desolated. It makes you wonder if the Klaxosaurs had the better end of the stick.
Yeah, well, you find out the Klaxosaur's history from 01, which is the Klaxosaur queen. And it was interesting that she was the only survivor, and she was going to pilot the giant mecha at the very end by herself, which 02, who was a clone of her. See, there's all these secrets that you discover through the series, which is why you've got to watch it first. And I really hope you haven't decided to just continue on and listen to this and not watch it first because I'm spoiling the hell out of this thing, which is
Well,
the joy of discovering it.
if you listen to the podcast, you know we're all about spoilers.
Mhm.
You're this far.
Oh yes, that's why there's certain episodes of this podcast I have not listened to because I'm saving for after watching the show. But yeah, but 02 is a clone of 01. And Dr. Franxx got a hold of some of the hair of 01, the Blue Queen Klaxosaur, when he went down to meet her, and that's how he developed 02 and the Alphas, which are another group of clones from 02. And he was working on those to try and create beings that could then pilot this Opus. I'm trying to remember the name of the big mechy thing that they developed to fight the Verm.
Yeah, I forgot the name. Yeah, it's kind of I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah. So there's a lot to this anime, like a lot.
Yeah.
Strelitzia Opus, that was it.
Oh yes, okay.
So the interesting thing about this group that are fighting for now, which outpost is this one? Is it Outpost 13?
I think it's 13.
Yeah, but each of the cities have a number, and this one is an experiment. This group is an experiment in that they were given a lot more freedoms than the other groups. They were given Franxx, their mecha, and someone described this to me who'd seen it as young teens drive sexy mecha. The actual design philosophy for the mechs was it makes you like to have fun with because they're sexy. So that was sort of the thought process I think that went into it. But you look at things like Robotech and Gundam and all those sort of shows that focused around mecha. The mechs are like blocky and there's a real sort of military, strong, tank-like aesthetic. Where there's harsh angles and everything like that. These mechs are not like that at all. They're soft curves and colors and streamers floating off that look like hair and all sorts of stuff like that. They're very anthropomorphized.
It's a very good thing you said that because if you're listening to this and you are a fan of hardcore mecha anime, and I got a couple of friends of mine, you might have a problem in how the mechs look in this anime because it's not your typical mech. I enjoy them. I like the hardcore mechs, obviously, but I enjoyed this one. For me, it's a nice departure from the Kurokomoro, which is also on Netflix. That style of mecha that you have there. But it's a good thing you mentioned that because I heard that from some of my friends. I have one in particular that is a um, mecha fan, and he said no, I'm not watching this. Like, come on, man, give it a try.
How old is this friend of yours?
He's about 25.
Yeah, picked it. I knew he was going to be younger. See, I've noticed about myself, and I'm sort of being a scientist. I sort of collect data on theories that I have, and that one fits into my theory in that when you're younger, like in your teens and your 20s, and maybe even into your 30s, you're very inflexible when it comes to accepting ideas. You've got this idea about how things should be, and when it varies from that, you go, no, I can't handle that. But as you get older, like us, past 50s, you look at, well, I think it can go two ways. You either get even more rigid or you relax all these boundaries and you go, okay, well, I'm going to give this a try. I'm going to try something different. I'm going to look for different things because I've been, watching these same things for decades and I want to see something different. I'm interested in things varying because it's going to be too much of the same old. My example of this is Battlestar Galactica. When I grew up, which is quite some decades ago now, when I was a kid, the original Battlestar Galactica was on, and that was Battlestar Galactica. That's what it meant to me. It was the shiny Cylons with the chunky suits and the one
Exactly.
single eye that went back and forth, and the shape of them and the Vipers and the Battlestar Galactica and the Cylon base ships and everything. All of that was fixed in my head at a young age. And then when the new, I say new, but it was 20 years ago now,
Mhm.
the new Battlestar Galactica started around in the early noughties. I had a lot of trouble with it for about the first 4 episodes, trying to say that this was Battlestar Galactica because Starbuck was a woman. What the hell? He's
Yeah.
supposed to be a cigar smoking, cocky American guy. He's not supposed to be. That's supposed to be a woman. So it took me a while for that switch to relax in my head. And at the time, I was in my 30s when that was happening, um, and I had a lot of trouble flexing. My mental flexibility wasn't there, and I couldn't accept that this was Battlestar Galactica until the story started engaging me, and I started getting really into the story, and then I started accepting the differences. And I guess with younger people, they have a lot of trouble accepting differences because they're used to something being a particular way, and when it's not that way, their mental flexibility may not be there. But as you grow older, you either go one of two ways. You get more mentally flexible, you get really, really hardcore, not accepting anything. And a lot of, well, the older generation from where I stand, my father was very inflexible about a lot of things. And it
Mhm.
took him till his 80s to become more flexible. I mean, the man couldn't say, I love you, because that's not what you did when you were a man, because he grew up in the 30s.
Mhm.
And you didn't do that. You didn't. Australian men did not show their emotions. So he didn't learn until his 80s to say I love you, which is a bit sad. But it's an example of that inflexibility because of the the society you grew up in and the expectations of that. And that
Yeah.
kind of links into the whole Japanese society and the expectations and the breaking of those expectations in anime because you can get away with it because it's animated. Um, but sort of drawing that all back together, we can go back to Darling and the Franxx and look at it and say, well, their society's broken. You've got this bunch of kids who have been given leeway, unlike all the other groups of kids that are piloting the Franxx for the other dome cities. All of their Franxx are the same. They have the same combat styles, the same weapons, and they work as a team. These guys were an exception. They were an experiment to see if you could give the kids, flexibility and the chance to develop their own ways of doing things, and whether it would be better than forcing them into a mold. And that's another sort of example of, do you make all the kids sit in class, like in real life in Japan, do you make all the kids sit in class and do everything the same way? Or do you give them the ability to choose their own paths and become individuals and do all that sort of thing? There's a whole lot of parallels in this anime, and that's why I consider it really, really deep with
Yes.
probably Japanese society. Now, I haven't lived in Japanese society, but from an outsider's perspective, that's what I'm seeing.
And I agree 100%. I mean, and this is what I invite everybody to watch this particular anime and reach out to us and let's discuss this because at the beginning, especially when you start watching the first episode, it might seem something that the anime really is not. And you want to give it a try. You want to keep on watching it because it's really really deep. The story it it's kind of like an onion if you think about it. And by the time
Mm.
you reach the end of you actually just peel through the surface, and when you get to the center, it's just like wow, this is especially I remember for me that wow moment, that biggest wow moment came on the final episode when I discovered when I saw what really happened over a period of you know years after the big battle. But yeah, this is like when you watch it. To me, the first episode it's kind of like an introduction, like you said, a slice of life. Um, but it gets you to the point where you can feel these people that you're going to follow through the series in a personal level. So then you can understand later on, whether what drives them to do the things that they got to do and how they get to the end of this journey, if you call it. What do you think? I mean, what was your impression the first time? Because I know you've seen it many times. This is kind of like my second time.
I've seen it 2.5 times, but this is actually the first anime that I ever watched all the way through. Was in tears at certain points, and right at the end, like the conclusion is very heartwarming, and I consider it was a great payoff for the end of the series. It's bittersweet, and the fact that their souls made it back to Earth and were reborn, which is I don't know a huge amount about religions in Japan, but I'm pretty sure there's one of them that involves reincarnation. But the two souls were reincarnated and they met again as kids underneath the tree that grew where Zero Two's body died. So
Yeah.
it's like a full circle. It was really really satisfying ending, I thought, although it was bittersweet, which is, I mean, you don't want a sickly sweet ending. It was satisfying. I'd have to say that the ending was quite satisfying.
Yeah, it's interesting because I know some of my friends will say, oh yeah, I know you, Robert. You just like happy endings. It was kind of, not and yes at the same time, because they did die, but the way that they brought it to view is they reincarnated, and you can see them. It's not like typically would happen if you have like a more realistic, well, I don't know if I want to call it more realistic, but you could do away with having complete different faces drawn, and then assimilate, or indicate that these are the two people, because that's what would happen. But no, when you see these two little kids, you see them, you see their faces. And it's just very, very heartwarming, and for me was a happy ending. And
Yeah.
I like happy endings.
Well, it was bittersweet because you were rooting for them to defeat the Klaxus. Sorry, not the Klaxus. Was the Verm, or you know, stop them from coming back to Earth for a good long time, and then for them to get back to Earth to their friends. But they never did. Their friends never saw them again. And their friends really didn't know if. I mean, there is a cheesy moment where they're sending them the power of love and friendship to help support them in their attack on the Verm home world, and it's like, yeah, well, how did we get here from a sort of a slice of life, kids learning about society from books and things because society's not there anymore. How do we get from there to space battles and fighting aliens and stuff?
Exactly.
And that's that left turn at Albuquerque that I was mentioning.
Yeah.
But I feel that again, if you're flexible enough to let a story go where it wants to. If you think about it, driving a car through a road in the mountains, you get a lot of surprises. There's hairpin turns, and the road follows the trajectory of the edge of the mountains and everything. And they put the road through where they could get it through. And you're driving back and forth, and you get these amazing views, but you don't know where the road's going, and it takes sudden turns and things like that. I look at this story like driving through the mountains. You're going to suddenly turn left, and there's this amazing vista, and it's completely different from what you expected. But it doesn't mean it's wrong. It's just where the story went. And as a writer myself, I respect other people's writing, and if they felt that they wanted to take the story in that direction, well, that was their choice. So, as a consumer of stories that I am as well, like these animes here, I accept their choice in that's the story they wanted to tell, not just go, no, it doesn't work for me, I'm not going to watch anymore, kind of thing. Because I really do feel that if you give up on it after it makes that flip and becomes a bit Robotech-y, That's why I brought up Robotech originally, because that sort of story of fighting these powerful aliens to try and save the world is a big Robotech staple. So it does feel quite Robotech-y in the last few episodes. But just accepting that that's the story they wanted to tell, and there's probably a whole bunch of nods to previous animes that I haven't seen within this anime. It's a smart story. It's, as you said, it's layered and it's well done. So you can really enjoy a whole bunch of different angles. It's not a simple rock'em sock'em robot story. It's not Saturday afternoon kids level stuff. It's really detailed, complicated, deep from the very opening scene. But then it's anime, so it's a bit pervy and it gets a bit silly at times, and it's got the whole box and dice. I think this particular anime, if you were coming from outside of the community that watches anime and wanted to experience an anime that kind of explains all the different facets of what an anime is, and something that wasn't going to be a cliffhanger and you have to wait years for the next season to find out what happens to the characters next, this one would be a good one to start with, because it will tell you what anime's like. It sort of rides the line down the middle of anime where it's not too silly. I actually had a look at Rent a Girlfriend. I watched the first episode. And I thought, oh my God, this is silly. It could, I mean, I got to give it a few more episodes to really get into it. But you were telling me that you hated and loved the characters at the same time. They just did such stupid things.
I did not mention who on purpose, because I'm kind of curious to see, because apparently you could hate different characters throughout, and this is one of the genius of the writing on this manga / anime, is the fact that depending on how you are or who you are, you're going to hate a different person.
Yeah, so you get different things out of it, and that's the quality of the writing, where on the surface it looks a bit stupid, but there's depth to it. But I brought that one up because comparing it to this one's sort of middle of the road. There's a little bit of stupid, there's a little bit of pervy, there's a little bit of weird, there's a little bit of all the different things that come out in anime. And this one will give you a sort of a good example of what to expect, more or less, of the different things within other anime. So you could sort of watch this story and find out what anime is like generally.
Yeah. And the great thing about this one, and like I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, is there's a little bit, it has everything, but it's just a little bit good enough for you to experience it, not a lot for you to feel uncomfortable about. And that's what I love about this one. Really, really well done.
Yeah.
So I thank you. I have to thank you, because this is one of those animes that I would watch over and over again, because it's that well done. So thank you for showing it to me. And
no worries. But like I said, this one is like level 2. If you want level 1, if you want to go up one, you got to look at those certain animes. And again, you've got scientific Railgun, which is one I really like, and Magical Index, which is the one that annoys me. So that you've got all that again with the characters that annoy you, and there's levels of pervy and all that sort of stuff, all the sort of stuff you expect with anime. But yeah, I'm waiting to do a show of that one with you, because I could talk on that one for hours. It's just fantastic.
And I want to let everybody know that it's coming. It's just, you just have to give me some time, because there's a lot to watch. So
so this one's 24 episodes, Darling in the Franxx, but then the I call them the certain animes, because there's 3 different animes. There's Scientific Railgun, Magical Index, and Scientific Accelerator. and each of them have a different facet. And the guy, I can't remember his name, but the guy who writes this stuff, he's just prolific. He writes what they call Japanese light novels. And I've been reading a lot of the translated ones, and yeah, they're pretty fluffy. He doesn't go into a lot of description. I think they're called light novels because you got to make up the description in your head. They're more action, 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 action. What's happening? What's happening? What's happening? Not how it looks, how it's feeling, all that sort of stuff. So that's why they call them light novels, I think. I'm not 100% sure, but that's my theory at the moment. But there's so much of it. He's written so much. You watch. There's 3 seasons of Magical Index, and there's 3 seasons of Scientific Railgun, and the 2 of them cross over. So there's things happening timeline-wise across the top of each other, and there's actually an arc which happens in both of them from different perspectives. It's amazing writing, and you watch it. I mean, there's an timeline order to watch them in that I've passed along to you, where you jump from one to the other to keep the timeline organized. But I watched one series and then I watched the other series, and when you get to that scene again, and you're looking at it from the other character, I go, oh, that's why he did that. Oh, that's how she got there. Oh, it's like,
I love those. Yeah.
And you see a character sitting at a table in a restaurant or a cafe, and you go, hang on, wasn't that one of the early protagonists or antagonists to that protag in the other? Yeah, it was. That's her. But she's got out of kids jail or whatever the hell they use. And she's on the straight and narrow again now, and she's sitting there in the restaurant, and it's just like really, really interesting writing. I can't recommend those ones high enough. But yeah, this one's a great encapsulation of anime, like the recent anime, like in the last decade. This one, I think, was 2017, was released in Japan and got to the Western audiences in 18.
It was 2018 based on, but then again, this is IMDb, so it might be when it was released in the US. There might be a different year in different countries, but on the US it was in 2018. The first episode, though, let me see. Yeah, it doesn't really say. It only says a year.
But I think the good thing about anime in general is that it's different. You can, watch a soap opera like General Hospital for 50 years. I think it's been going for ridiculously long time. And it's the same old with different characters. They run out of ideas. Everything's like you could walk into a hospital and see this stuff every day. And some people like comfortable drama. I call it comfortable drama because it's stuff that isn't out of the ordinary. It's things you're going to see in any human life. In fact, it's probably sanitized from what you're going to see in a human life because people get ugly when they have drama. People crying with snot coming out of their nose and screaming at each other and people losing their shit in real life. And you can't show that on TV, so it's going to be sanitized drama.
Yeah, if I watch drama, I have to have something on, like, it has to have sci-fi. It has to have something. I can't. I typically don't like drama by itself.
Yeah, well, it's just that's life, and I've got enough of that already every day. I want something different. I want something out there. I want something that engages the futurism side of my brain and says, wow, could that actually happen? And the good thing about anime is it's like I could imagine them sitting around the writing table going, okay, we need to we need to come up with a new manga, or we need to start a new anime, because sometimes you go from a manga writer will write a manga, it will get popular and it will be converted into an anime. And sometimes somebody will have an idea for an anime and they'll write an anime, and it becomes so popular they'll write a manga about it and go back and do backstory and all that sort of stuff and put it in manga. So it can jump either way. It's not specifically manga, anime. It can go back the other way. But I could imagine them sitting around a writing table. Okay, so we need a tagline or a pitch line, an elevator pitch for what this new anime is going to be about. What's it going to be? Okay, so got a bunch of middle schoolers because we love middle schoolers. And in this world, they live on aircraft carriers. And the schools are on giant aircraft carriers. And one of the school sports is driving tanks. Okay, that sounds about weird enough for anime. What are we going to call it? Oh, Girls and Panzer. I think sounds like a good name because we like German. Okay, so it's Girls and Panzer. So I started watching Girls and Panzer, so I'm using that as an example. But you can see that they take school. Yeah, school's ordinary. Yeah, we can go to school. Okay, so you got some school kids. What completely unnatural, weird things are going to happen? Okay, so they're sitting in school one day, this bunch of kids, and the whole a big circle out of the section of their city gets transported 250 years into the future. It's like, okay, that's pretty sci-fi. Then what happens? Oh, well, then you discover that they were chosen to be like this, and they're expecting them to show up, and there's these two bunches fighting, and they get to pilot these mecha suits and save the city so it can go back in time. That is actually the premise for another anime called Revisions, which I watched on Netflix recently.
Nice.
So, I mean, you've got this bunch of kids. What sort of weird sci-fi shit can happen to them today? And that's an anime. So it's right up your and my alley in that you don't want normal drama. You want drama that has got some sort of either weird or exciting or, wow, I never thought of something like that thing happening.
Yeah, we have a bunch of kids in this whole school, right? Okay, what could happen? Okay, the whole world got frozen into stone. And then they wake up 1,000 years into the future. There you go. You have Dr. Stone.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a bunch of middle schoolers. What weird shit happens to them today? And
I feel bad for them.
Bunch of middle schoolers. Several of them happen to have really amazing ESP powers. Oh, and there's the certain scientific index. Sorry, certain scientific railgun. It's a bunch of middle schoolers. What weird shit happens to them today? And that's how they start most of these things.
Awesome. Oh man. So yeah, again, thank you so much for coming and talking about this in our show. Thank you for introducing me to this.
You're quite welcome.
This is a really cool anime. For all of you who have stuck all the way through to this, and you don't mind, obviously, either you watch this or you don't mind the spoilers. Thank you, and reach out to us in Discord. Max and me, we are in the same Discord for Science Fiction Remnant. You can find the link on if you go to you find us on Twitter, or in the show notes for this episode if you're listening to the podcast, or if you actually are watching in Twitch right now or in YouTube, you'll find the link to our description. Reach out to us. Let's have a conversation. I'm really curious. Well, we are really curious to know what you guys think. If you watched it, or if you decide to go all the way with the spoilers and then watch this, or if you already previously watched it, let us know once you finish. Reach out to us and let's talk about this and see what you guys think. This and if we were right in recommending, I can tell you one thing is you hear me thanking Max so much for this over here because I really enjoy this anime. So I like to hear if any of you would like to thank Max again for introducing you guys to this anime.
I think it's well worth the time spent watching it. In fact, I watched this. Like I said, it's the only anime. Well, it's the first anime that I ever watched and went, okay, I got to watch that again, and watched it again straight afterwards because there was so much to it that I needed another watch to take it all in.
Yeah, any final thoughts or any plugs that you'd like to announce?
Well, my final thought on this anime is that depending on your societal bent, like if you're highly religious and there's all that sort of morality kick, you're going to struggle a bit with anime because it is a bit pervy. it's awesome, and it's a shame in that the pervy bits can be enjoyable if you're not too concerned. I mean, it's animated; it's not happening to people, but the idea is there that it's becoming a little bit normalized, which can be a problem. But I think there's two levels in Japanese society where everybody's watching everybody else, and therefore you can't have any fun. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily call the perviness in this fun, but it is fun in that this is sort of their escape. So they can escape to this and think about it, but it actually doesn't happen in real life. So basically what I'm trying to get at is give anime a chance, because the stories are so rich, and the science fiction bent and the amazing characterization and the enjoyment you'll get out of the story far outweighs if you're a little bit uncomfortable with the perviness. And also violence. Anime is not for kids. I should say that. You need to have an adult mindset to deal with the violence that's involved in a lot of these animes. My personal favorite manga, I'll jump to manga for a minute because they're not too far distant from each other. A manga is the cartoon comic version of animes if you haven't ever read them, but a lot of them are very adult. There's like heads exploding and people being cut in half and all this sort of stuff. So they can be quite graphic and violent, but it is very adult. So you have to have an adult mindset to go into a lot of these things. But then a lot of the times happening to young people. So you sort of have to try not to use Western religious morality on anime, or you're not going to get anywhere with it. You've got to be a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more open, say, okay, this is being presented to me through a Japanese lens, so it's going to be a little bit unusual, a little bit different, sometimes a little bit uncomfortable. But if you push through that, you can really enjoy the stories. There are deep stories, multiple layers, amazing characterization, and as in this one, there's a really nice conclusion. It's a happy ending. It's a bittersweet, but it's a happy ending, and you can really finish this one and go, I've enjoyed that story. Now I can move on. That's done, rather than hanging for 5 years for another installment, waiting for the manga to be written so they can make the anime and things like that. But I highly recommend to anybody who's got a real sci-fi bent and wants really unusual situations in storytelling, not your general hospital crowd, but the people who listen to Sci-Fi Remnant, I'm sure, the sort that interested in that sort of thing. I highly recommend anime, and I highly recommend this anime. I highly recommend the certain animes. And just go out there and watch a few episodes of an anime, give it a chance to start developing, because a lot of the storytelling is slow burn, slow introduction of the concepts. There's usually something happening in the background that you don't find out about until a lot later, and that's when you go, oh wow, that's what's happening. Oh, son of a gun. So give anime a chance. Yeah, because it's really enjoyable. Exactly. You get a lot out of it. It's very rich.
Awesome. And for all of you who did not know, yesterday I was invited to Radio Chaos. So I hope you guys saw my tweet. I tweeted about it. And Max, I don't know if you want to say a little bit about what
sure.
Radio Chaos is and a little bit more
so
about it.
I'm one of the organizers of a group called the Alita Army. We're the fandom for Alita Battle Angel, and yet another manga that became it doesn't really have an anime. It has what's called an OVA, original video animation, which was a term that was coined in the 90s. And what they did with those back then was they'd make a few episodes that covered the start of a manga, and then you'd watch that and then you go and read the manga, because you're supposed to that was supposed to be like an advertisement for the manga. But now anime sort of ballooned out of that, and now anime's become its own thing, and rather than advertising manga, it's converting whole mangas into animated stories. And the whole thing about the large eyes in a lot of animes and mangas is that they're copying Disney from back in the 50s with the large eyes. So that's actually where the large eyes came from. Why I talk about large eyes is because Alita Battle Angel 2019 movie, very underrated, but it's a fantastic movie. Like a lot of these animes that we've been talking about, hugely layered. We've been running a show called Radio Chaos, which is actually one of the characters from the original manga. I should mention that Yukito Kishiro, who writes the Gumu manga, which means Gun Dream, which was converted into Battle Angel Alita in English. So they changed the names around a little bit. The main character in Gumu is Gali, which, because in Japanese there isn't a differentiation between R and L, could be Gary. We don't know. But Battle Angel Gary sounds a bit odd, but we actually have a guy in the Leader Army whose name is Gary, so he likes that. But it's another fantastic story. The main protag is a young lady who's a total replacement cyborg. So basically her brain's been put into a cybernetic body. And we've had many episodes talking about the future of prosthetics and cybernetic enhancement and how all that might work. But the world that Yukito Kishiro has created for this character is really engaging. I've read all of the manga up to the very last thing that's been produced in Japan. There's certain groups that are doing fan translations. So I'm keeping up with the bits that haven't been produced. And I bought the last volume that was released in English, but there's maybe 3 or 4 chapters after that you can't get yet. So I'm sort of sneaking ahead in that fashion. But there's been one movie that was made. Robert Rodriguez directed it. It was produced by James Cameron. It was unfortunately positioned to be the very last movie that came out by 20th Century Fox before they were absorbed by Disney. And it didn't get the advertising it deserved, because the advertising group for it were actually sending out their resumes and trying to get new jobs. So they didn't quite didn't quite get out to the number of people that should have got out to. It only made $85 million in the US, and for a guaranteed sequel, $100 million is kind of the cutoff in the US. But it was greatly appreciated across the world. China was a huge participant in going to see that movie. And in fact, the biggest country outside of Japan that appreciates the manga Gumu is France.
Nice.
So the French are very into this story, into this property. It's also big in Germany and Italy. So there's translations of the manga to there, but and of course English. It's not as popular in English as it is in some of these other languages, but there's more English-speaking countries. So spread across all those countries is probably more in English. But the focus, Yukito Kishiro actually went to France to a convention that they had for Gumu, and he was there on panels and stuff. So they got to actually speak to him, which was pretty fantastic. But this movie, everybody should go and see it. It's actually showing on, it's a cable channel that's actually across Europe and America. And it won't come to me at the moment, but it is becoming more and more available. And people who don't like to buy Blu-rays and don't like to go to the cinema, but will watch it when it comes to something they don't have to pay for, is starting to get on board with it now. So we're campaigning for a sequel. It's on hold with Disney at the moment because they have control over it and they're not going anywhere with, the way I look at it is James Cameron's been given $1 billion to make Avatar sequels. The Avatar 2 hasn't come out yet. He's maxed out his credit card at $1 billion. Can anybody imagine having a credit card?
Wow.
He's got $1 billion of what is now Disney's money, because they bought Fox. It was Fox's money. And they need to see some return before they're going to give him any more. So everybody should go out and see Avatar 2 at the end of next year. And then hopefully when that cracks the $1 billion, and they got their money back, then he can get some more money to do Alita 2. That's how I'm looking at it. But go and see Alita. It is fantastic. You can get it on Disney Plus in certain countries through Asia, Australia. It was on HBO Max, but I think that's stopped now because the deals with HBO only went until next year, and then it reverts back to Disney. So it'll probably end up on Disney Plus. But it's you can get it on all the paid streaming places. I can get it on YouTube. You can get it on what is it?
I know I bought my copy. Love that movie.
Good man. You can see up here. There's a Alita reliquary behind me here, so there's all sorts of goodies there. You can also see where's my finger? Oh, other side, that way. Okay, so that's Rem and Ram from ReZero, which is another fantastic anime and manga. But that if you want characters that are going to piss you off, the main protagonist, Subaru, he will piss you off. He's really annoying, but cute girls. They're actually demons, those two girls. They don't look it, but yeah, they're demons. And you can't see all of her, but up there, that one is 02, and that one there is the legs of Makoto Misika, who's Railgun from. So I started collecting a few of the figures because they were so cool.
Nice.
But yeah, so the Alita Army is campaigning for a sequel. So check out Alita Battle Angel the movie and join us campaigning for a sequel because we plan to get one.
Yeah, just remember, if you like Alita the movie and you want a sequel, you are part of the Alita Army.
That's right. And there's some particularly good Alita episodes on a particular podcast called the Science Fiction Remnant, as I recall.
Yeah. I gotta listen to those. I heard that they were really good.
I think everyone should listen to those.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for coming to our episode to talk about Darling and the Franxx.
Sure.
Thank you for everything you do. I'm sure I'm speaking for most of the people that want a part 2 on Alita. When I say thank you for Radio Chaos and for the Alita Army for the joint effort to try to make this into a reality. So thank you for that as well.
For sure. Oh yeah, we're gonna be there for the long haul. The thing about Alita is the character never gives up. She's perseverance is the word that I use. If there was one word I had to describe for that character, is perseverance, and it's something that we all could use a bit more of, especially in these times. But that the Alita Army, the core of the Alita Army, is going to persevere, and we're going to make sure that this happens. It's not a case of if; it's a case of when. So.
Awesome. And go ahead for all of those listeners who don't know, go ahead and tell them where they can find you or the Alita Army.
Well, you can obviously find me and a few other members of the Alita Army on the Science Fiction Remnant Discord, which is a fantastic place. We have a lot of fun there. There's a memes corner and all sorts of other things discussing various properties like animes and mangas and Star Wars and Star Trek and Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and all sorts of other things like that. I'm also on Twitter. My handle's actually down at the bottom of the screen there, Optimistic Aussie, so you can catch me there. I send out advertisements for the topics for the Radio Chaos live stream every week, so if you follow me, you'll find out when it's on and what's happening. I'm also on Facebook. There's a whole bunch of Alita groups there, and I'm in most of them. I also have a I call it the Flanfic. If you know anything about Alita, you know that one of the antagonists, Professor Nova, is a flanaholic. He likes to read a lot of flan. It helps him think. And I'm writing a fanfic, which I call the Flanfic for obvious reasons, which is my idea of what should be in the second movie. So it's pulling in ideas from the first movie, the novelizations from the first movie and the prequel novel, the manga, and my own stuff all mixed in together, and it's going pretty well so far. I don't know
Awesome.
if you've read it. Have you read any of it?
Um, Go ahead and send me through Discord, just to make sure. I can't remember
Sure.
if you send me a link once or not, but I'll go ahead and read one of those.
Excellent. Yeah, it's 57,000 words at the moment. I haven't even got through the first third. You know how they divide stories up into thirds. I haven't got through the first third yet. I'm 67,000 words in, so it's going to be a long one, I think. But
Awesome.
yeah,
Awesome.
it's coming along well.
Awesome. Okay, so you guys, go ahead and reach out to us. Again, I'm really curious. You know, from Max, we had a lot of fun on a Discord. So go ahead and reach out to us on Discord, if you're on Twitter, Sci-Fi Remnant, and let's discuss this movie. And again, thank you so much for coming to another episode, and I hope to see you soon.